You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This week, we're sipping on some skinny margs and talking about ration balancers. What are ration balancers anyway? And why is everything so dang expensive? Thanks for tuning in.
From Heels Down Mag, a podcast where horse pros chat about what's happening in the horse world over drinks. Welcome to Happy Hour.
I'm Justine Griffin.
I'm Jessica Payne.
And I'm Ellie Woznicka. Welcome to episode 112 of Heels Down Happy Hour.
Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
What's going on?
Canada wildfires, man. That's what's going on.
It's craziness.
Yeah.
So is it real bad by you, Ellie?
Yeah. So I think right now we're up in the 200 for our air quality index. So the horses are inside so they can easily get to water. They've got fans and I'm trying to move out as much air as I can. But it's definitely better in the barn because as soon as you step out of the barn, it smells like you're at a barn fire. I can't see my mountains around me. My sky is kind of orangey. So it's spooky for sure. So I'm definitely thinking about everyone up in Canada and hoping that this'll pass soon. We're hopefully going to get some rain in a couple days. So I'm hoping that'll help clear everything out, but not bad by you guys. I'm assuming, Justine, you're far enough away. Right?
Yeah, no signs. Just hurricane season started, so it'll blow it away anyway.
Yeah, don't worry. He'll blow it back north. It's going to start coming. It's like, stay away. Well, I had the most amazing drink that I personally made. I did get it off a recipe off Pinterest, so don't worry. Like, I did not just make it up. But I had friends over. I know this has been a couple weeks ago, but it was or almost a month ago, Cinco de Mayo. But I've now made it twice, and it's so good. So I was making a bunch of stuff for Cinco de Mayo and decided to make skinny margaritas. And I've done skinny margaritas that still have agave syrup and all this stuff. So I was like, I really want to try something that is truly a skinny margarita type thing. So I found one that is 1 ounce tequila, and I use a white Blanc, really high quality tequila because I'm not really a tequila person. So I feel like if I use just kind of medium, higher quality, not super expensive, but then it's not got that bitter kind of tequila taste to it for me. So
So basically you want tequila that just doesn't taste like tequila?
If I could make a margarita with a bourbon, then it's up my alley.
Got it. Okay.
But I haven't found that yet. So if somebody has a bourbon margarita recipe for me, I got it. I'll drink that. So I found 2 or 3 tequilas that I can make mixed drinks with, and it doesn't give me a headache. So I did 1 ounce tequila, 1 ounce Contour, and 1.5 ounces of lime juice. And I actually put a little more lime juice because it says even more to taste. And I put all of that into a shaker glass, filled it with ice, shook it up. And then I did really kind of thicker, coarse salt and did a salt rim on it. And I did the lime, did the salt rim and did salt, and then put more ice in my little cup. Just did a highball glass and then did the shaker and poured it in. And it was amazing. It was really, really good.
I could go for one of these right now.
I know.
And it was kind of hot outside. So it was perfect temperature. And it was amazing. I had one of them and I was like, perfect. This is my kind of margarita. Because it wasn't super sweet, and too much sugar kind of gives me my stomach and headache and everything.
Right. I was going to say that's when you get the headache, when you have 2 of those. But so no, this sounds delicious.
It was really, really good. So I totally recommend it. We will put the recipe. I did find it on Pinterest, but we'll put it in the show notes and stuff. So it's perfect. This podcast is sponsored by Purina Animal Nutrition, with 3 research-backed ration balancers to fill nutritional gaps in your horse's diet. Enriched Plus delivers a concentrated source of protein, vitamins, and minerals without unnecessary calories. Enriched Plus Senior features the Active Age prebiotic technology and the Outlast supplement for aging easy keepers. The Omega Match is rich in omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin E, great for horses without access to green grass. Find a ration balancer for your horse at purinamills.com/ration balancers or visit your local feed store.
All right, guys, it's time for news. And our news section is brought to you by the Heelstown Spark, the only daily equestrian newsletter. It's free. If you want to subscribe, you can go to bit.ly/forward Spark by HD. Jess, you want to go first?
Yeah, I feel like my news has been sad lately, but I do really want to give a shout out because I feel like a lot of people kind of got overlooked a lot on social and everything else. And I really just want to give a shout out. So there was a younger rider. She actually was last year's Young Rider European champion. She was at Bicton with her younger horse in the CCI 3-star long format this past weekend in Bicton over in England. And she had a bad accident with her little eventing mare, Daiquiri. And the horse ended up having to be euthanized on course. They had a fall cross country. The horse had to be euthanized. She actually had to be airlifted out and is in the ICU, but she is in stable condition, it says, in the ICU. So I just want to give a big shout out that hopefully she's doing better, and our thoughts and prayers are with her because it's such a crazy time to have lost her horse. And then now the parents are having to deal with this. So, just wanted to give a big shout out to her because, she was a bright young rider and we hope she makes a recovery and everything.
Absolutely. That's a terrible story.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, let everybody know over in Europe and everything that we are thinking about her, and hopefully she is, going to be able to recover and everything else over in the hospital in England.
Well, what about you, Ellie?
Well, I felt bad because I also have some bad news, but I think it's got a positive spin on it. So I'm sure everyone's kind of seen the snippets, but there's been 12 horses that have died over the past month at Churchill Downs. And so Churchill Downs is going to suspend racing for several weeks after the 12 horses that have died and the other horses that have been injured over the past month. So they're relocating all of their races to Ellis Park, which is in Henderson, Kentucky.
Wow.
Yeah, so definitely scary for such a, well-respected racetrack to be doing something like this. But I think it's got a very, positive spin on it. They're saying, what happened at our track is, deeply upsetting and absolutely unacceptable. So they're going to, shut everything down starting on June 7th. And they're going to have a complete investigation from the racing authorities, because as of right now, they haven't found a single factor to determine what caused the deaths. So the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority is going to do a top-to-bottom review of all the safety and surface protocols, as well as the integrity measures in collaboration and consultation with nationwide experts to make sure that it is safe to race horses there. So I think it's a good thing. Horrible that so much bad has happened there, but I'm glad to see that they're making a stand towards animal welfare.
Good for them. Good for them that they're going to take action and say, hey, look, we're going to move all of our races. It's very inconvenient for everybody, but we need to get to the bottom of this. So honestly, props to them, because that's a huge step forward in trying to fix a lot of the problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a PR nightmare, right? It's like a crisis PR moment. And then even the Preakness, like Bob Baffert's horse dies and the next one wins, right? It's like the worst optics for the industry. And this integrity organization was created to help put systems in place to protect the horses, right? So it shows that is working, whether people like it or not.
Exactly.
It kind of reminds me of the safe sport argument of everyone up in arms about how annoying safe sport is, but it is there for a reason, right? And I'm very pleased to see this, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, as somebody who engages with horses from a hobby sport and Olympic sport perspective, what happens in racing affects us. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
And the welfare and everything. It reflects on us.
When you I read the New York Times articles online and then look at the comments, which as a journalist you're never supposed to do, but it shows just one, the literacy problem in our country, but also it shows just how little people really understand the context of like the number 12 horses died is a lot and is really scary, but they all died in very individual circumstances, and we need to understand why. But for people who don't understand the sport or understand horses, all they see is that number, and that is very grim. And we need to be more investigative so that we can provide the public with more information. So it's not this quick to like cancel all horse racing, right? In this day and age of this culture where we just write off stuff so quickly, right? So, it's tough, right? As somebody who loves thoroughbreds, I wish they never had to race, but then I would never know thoroughbreds if the racing industry didn't exist. So we have to find some sort of system that works to protect the horses. And I'm glad to see that if track as prominent and as public facing as Churchill Downs is trying to do something serious about it. So we'll see what comes next, right?
Yeah. What have you got, Justine?
Okay, well, I've got happy news.
Oh, good.
Good. Thank goodness.
So it's the Devon time of year, which is a lovely, magical time of year. Devon is just like one of those horse shows that's just a complete bucket list. It's just, there's something about the oval and the classes there and just the atmosphere of this truly tremendous horse show that spans a number of disciplines that just makes it a really cool and magical place to be. So I just wanted to highlight, several of the riders who won big this year. I love seeing Buck come out on top on the arena eventing. I know eventing is not ever really supposed to be done in an arena, but it's so fun that it exists at Devon in this way. It's a really fun thing to watch. I actually streamed it on Clip My Horse over the weekend while I was at a horse show because I saw like Buck's round, but I wanted to see everybody else's. And it's just so much fun. And I love to see the audience cheering on riders. It was cool. So congrats to Buck. And then also Hunt Tosh continues like his unbelievable
He was on fire.
stardom.
It was beautiful.
I know. Like you just can't beat him, man. It's amazing.
No.
It's like truly like even if you don't appreciate the hunters like that, like you can't argue with that is just a gorgeous ride. So it was cool to see him win some accolades again this year. And then honestly, Ashley Bond winning the
She was on fire. It was so great.
It was so fun to watch. And she's a name that's been around for a little while, but it was just cool to see her take home a big win.
No, it was time well due. And then Devin Ryan was second, which was pretty awesome on the Eddie Blue horse, which is a longtime porter of him. So it was some great results, to be honest. Like I was super excited. They both went double clear, but like it was so fun to watch, and it was good. Like I love Devin and stuff, but it was a really good, fun year for them to come out of the 4-star with 2 top results.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it was just a really fun year to like catch up on Devin stuff. So that's my news. Is Devin was fun.
Yes.
A big shout out to everyone who helps us continue to make this podcast possible and donates to us on Patreon. We really appreciate everyone who helps us. And we have a lot of exclusive content for you guys there, and you should definitely check it out. So that's patreon.com/heelsdown.
All right, guys. So I got to try a ration balancer. This is a relatively new product from Purina. I've been feeding it for the last 2 months, and I felt like that was long enough where I've kind of figured out the product to share with you guys. So I tried the Purina Omega Match Balancer, and I chose this product after having a consult with a Purina nutritionist to find out if either one of my thoroughbred geldings would be a good candidate for a ration balancer. So as you know, Mikey is on rest and in rehab, so he's not really getting a ton of turnout time. We only just started introducing some very highly supervised, completely on drugs, small paddock turnout time for poor Mikey. But he's a horse that, for the vast majority of his life with me has spent a lot of time turned out. So I've always worried for him that he's missing something, right? That he's not getting in that time on grass anymore. And that's what this Omega Match Balancer is designed to be. So Purina created this, and it was formulated by their equine nutritionists with ingredients that are meant to be essentially like inspired by feeding fresh pasture. So there's some, like if your horses are used to being out on grass, or say you're someone who's on the show circuit for many weeks at a time and your horse doesn't get consistent turnout, this is a great product to consider. Or even if your horse is on stall rest, which is kind of Mikey, right? This limited ingredient formula basically replaces what your horses get during a grazing period. It has a bunch of fatty acids and antioxidants that you would find in green grass. But it's still a ration balancer, which means that it provides a way to fill nutritional gaps. So say, like I said, if your horse can't go out on green grass, or if you have a horse that has some metabolic concerns, so say you turn your horses out in a dry lot for that reason, or even if you feed like a complete feed, like I feed a senior feed to Mikey, but he to be honest, he's just a big fat dude. He has a dad bod right now that we're trying to work off in rehab, that he's not getting, like, honestly, we backed him off the grain a little bit because he's so fat. So he's not getting the recommended amount that he should be getting per feeding. So I feel comfortable supplementing the ration balancer at this time, since he's not meeting that volume of feed that is recommended to feed at this time. So it's, and he still gets, his normal sources of hay and forage. But what I like about this product is you can feed a little bit more of it than like a normal ration balancer, because it's not crazy nutrient dense, that like for horses that live on a balancer as their sole way to like fill in the gaps of a forage based diet. This product is made of like flaxseed and timothy, so you can feed a little bit more of it. And I will tell you, I started feeding it to Mikey almost like a treat in the beginning. Like, here's like a bucket after I'm done grooming you to eat, like a little treat. And he just eats it up. He really likes it. So it's a really nice product. It's easy to find. It's in my Tractor Supply. It's at my local feed stores. And I had a bunch of questions when I was first considering this, right? Because I have a horse that's not really in a ton of work. So I didn't want to feed anything that was too high in protein that would make him wild and crazy, because that's the last thing I need right now, is him being any wilder than he already is. And I got into that with Dr. Kelly Vineyard, who is our guest on the show this week. So you'll have to wait till our segment and our interview with her to find out a little bit more about why ration balancers work and when is a good time to consider one for your horse. But if you want to learn more about the Purina Omega Match Balancer, you can go to purinamills.com and look at their ration balancers and find it there. Again, it's the Purina Omega Match Balancer. All right. So I'm here with Dr. Kelly Vineyard from Purina Animal Health, and we are going to talk about ration balancers today. So ration balancers have been a feed option for horses for a long time, but I still think there's quite a bit of confusion when people go to the feed store and they're looking at a traditional complete feed bag of grain and a ration balancer. So Dr. Vineyard, I was hoping we could start just by, can you explain what a ration balancer is and what makes it different than like a traditional complete feed?
Sure. So when you think about a feed that you can buy for your horse at the feed store, as nutritionists, we kind of can put them into three different categories, with ration balancers being one of the categories. But let me briefly describe the other two categories so then we can differentiate, what a ration balancer is. So the three different categories of feeds are, one would be a complete feed, meaning the definition of a complete feed from a nutritionist standpoint means that it can replace hay, or it can fully or partially replace hay in the diet. So it has fiber built in. And a good example of that is, your typical senior feeds, right? Equine senior can be fed to horses that can no longer eat hay because the hay is built into the formula. And that's a true complete feed. It also has vitamins and minerals added to meet all the horse's nutrient requirements. Then you have a concentrate feed. And that, I will admit, most of us nutritionists call it that. A lot of the general horse population will just call it feed. But a concentrate feed is designed to supply calories and, essential nutrients, protein, vitamins, and minerals. And that's your typical, sweet feeds, your pelleted feeds, grains, grain-based feeds, grain mixes that they're not meant to replace hay. You feed them along with hay. Okay. But they also are providing calories. Now you've got your third category, ration balancer. So I like to think of a ration balancer. It is a form of a concentrate, but it's really not intended to supply calories. A ration balancer does exactly what it says. It balances a forage-based ration. So the main ration for a horse would be hay and grass and, any type of forage. And then the ration balancer comes in and balances the nutrients that are missing in a forage-based diet. It's not adding calories. It's not adding, usually any other kind of feed ingredients. It is just protein, vitamins, and minerals. So in a way, you can think of it like it's like from a human perspective, like, we take our Centrum vitamin, to make sure we get everything in fill the gaps in the diet. The ration balancer fills nutritional gaps of a forage-based diet because forages will not contain enough trace minerals to meet a horse's daily nutrient requirement. They're traditionally always going to be low in copper and zinc. And also specifically when you're talking about protein, depending on the horse, sometimes forages are not going to meet essential amino acid requirements either. And then, vitamins can vary depending on how the forage is harvested. So your ration balancer is basically your insurance policy that you're meeting all of your horse's needs, that horse that's eating a forage only diet. And if you fed them a concentrate, they would get too fat. They don't need a concentrate because they're keeping their weight really well on a forage based diet. And so the ration balancer is to balance the ration of a forage based diet.
Interesting. Now I know generally a ration balancer is fed not nearly at the same volume at,
right.
what you feed a concentrate or complete feed. And is that just because it's so nutrient dense? You're really just, like you said, balancing those minerals that you're not getting from the forage?
Yes, exactly. Traditionally, ration balancers are a 1 to 2 pound a day for 1,000-pound horse feeding rate. And that's also to keep the calories low as well. Your concentrate feeds, will be greater than that, maybe 3 to 4 pounds a day minimum feeding rate, because it contains some other ingredients, either, beef pulp or grain-based ingredients or things like that. The ration balancer is not going to contain much or any of those types of ingredients. It's just, you got your protein ingredients and then you got your vitamin and minerals and then, probably a little bit of something in there at least to make it tasty because vitamins and minerals by themselves don't taste good for horses. So you do, as a feed manufacturer, when we're creating these ration balancers, we definitely have to, put something else in there to make it not taste terrible. So they'll actually eat it. And so, yeah, but it's a very low volume and that keeps the calories down. A lot of these horses do have, issues, being overweight, and that a ration balancer is a great option for horses that are overweight. They don't need extra calories from a concentrate, but they do need nutrition, right? So that's where the ration balancer comes in.
So that was my next question. What type of horses are generally good candidates to eat a ration balancer?
Yeah. So that would be your easy keepers. So easy keepers can fall into a lot of categories. You can have easy keeper performance horses that, that are working and you're riding but they still, are maybe they're a breed that tends to be an easy keeper. They can do really well with ration balancers. Your retired horses or horses that are not being worked, that are out to pasture. They're definitely good candidates for ration balancers. And then we also use ration balancers in growing and breeding horses very regularly, especially in some of the easier keeper breeds. Broodmares can do really well on ration balancers up through their third trimester of gestation. Typically, most mares are going to need more calories once they start lactating. And then also in that third trimester when a lot of fetal development is occurring. So a lot of times we'll recommend transitioning to a growth feed that third trimester and then in through lactation for that mare. But then once you wean her and she stops lactating, a lot of them can do really well, going back on a ration balancer and good quality forage. And then with growing horses, kind of through that phase where they're still with mom, we recommend, creep feeds, a growth feed. But then once they're weaned, depending on the horse, if it's a horse, a young growing horse that has really good forage, they can do really well with a ration balancer too. And then finally, one of the really good applications for ration balancers that I utilize them in, especially like working with veterinarians and working with young growing horses that have developmental orthopedic disease, or DOD, ration balancers are a very good tool to use when you are dealing with DOD in young horses. You do want to try to slow their growth rate down, but you don't want to deprive them of essential nutrients. So instead of just starving them and putting them on a hay-only diet, which I do see happen occasionally out in the world, that's not going to supply those. You're not going to get good calcium for the bones. You're not going to get, the trace minerals to help healthy cartilage development. So the ration balancer comes in for those horses with DOD, gives them essential nutrients, but it reduces the overall calories in the ration. So we can kind of slow their growth rate down, let the DOD resolve, and kind of get back to a healthier growth pattern.
Got it. So there's no situation where someone might be feeding a complete or concentration feed and top dressing with a ration balancer, right? You wouldn't want to mix those.
That does happen. So top dressing concentrates with ration balancers. We used to recommend that actually quite often because a ration balancer is such a good source of protein, especially. So a couple scenarios where you may want to do that. Number one, if you are feeding below the recommended feeding rate for a concentrate feed, like say you have like a grain mix feed, but you're only feeding 1 or 2 pounds a day, you have two options to meet your horse's nutrient requirements. You can either just switch to a ration balancer instead, and don't bother with feeding 1 or 2 pounds of that grain mix, or you would want to top dress a ration balancer on top of that, because the 1 or 2 pounds a day of a grain mix, that feed's not formulated to feed that low of feeding rate. Okay. So if you want to make sure that horse is getting enough copper and zinc and essential amino acids, yes, you will need to top dress a ration balancer. And that can work really well. If you have kind of the horse in between, maybe a ration balancer alone isn't quite enough to keep them where you want them, but you don't want to feed 4 pounds a day of a grain mix, then you can do a blend. You can do a ration balancer and use that as your base of your diet, and then just top dress with 1 or 2 pounds of another product with more calories in it. And that can work well. And then otherwise, if you're feeding, the recommended rate, but you would like to add some protein, say maybe your forage is pretty poor quality and it's really low protein, and you know that, but this is what you have to deal with. And you want to increase the protein concentration of your ration, you can utilize a ration balancer, top dress that to add some protein to the diet.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad I brought this up. So I have a thoroughbred gelding that is on stall rest. He's recovering from a suspensory injury, so he does not have access to pasture like he usually would.
Right.
He eats a senior feed and is, for a thoroughbred, I would consider him a fairly easy keeper. Like he holds his feet just fine. But for example, I was looking at the Purina Omega Match product as something that could supply what he's not getting so much in forage, since he's no longer out on grass.
Right. So all he gets is hay right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that would be a safe time to consider a ration balancer like that?
So yeah, actually stall rest is one of the situations where we definitely recommend ration balancers, because you don't want to feed them extra energy, right?
Right.
Because some of them can get a little crazy on stall rest. And even if not, there's no sense in pouring calories into a horse that can't expend them. So a ration balancer is the perfect choice, because if you're feeding a true senior feed, most senior feeds have a higher minimum recommended feeding rate than a concentrate. So you would probably need to be feeding him 6-7 pounds a day of the senior feed to be meeting his nutrient requirements, but that may be too much for him on stall rest, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, transitioning to a ration balancer will reduce the calories, but it'll actually increase the nutrients, and it'll also help support healing of his tendons and ligaments and soft tissue. So the Omega Match is unique in that it's a ration balancer that's specifically made for horses that have limited access or no access to pasture. It's basically, formulated with quite a bit of timothy, hay, and flaxseed. Grass is one of the best sources of omega-3 fatty acids there is in the horse's diet. So when a horse is not eating fresh grass, He's not getting, the omegas from there, and both omega-3s and omega-6s. And so that's where the flax comes in to help provide that he would not be getting in grass. The other neat thing about Omega Match is there's natural source vitamin E that would normally be found in fresh grass, but that is low in hay. So that's added into that formula. There's added biotin to help support hoof health and hoof growth. And so it is, and it's got Outlast in it. So if we're a horse on stall rest, probably a little stressed,
Sure.
And so the Outlast gastric support is just a little bit of extra support in that situation.
Interesting. Okay. I'm glad I picked it. I thought it was worth a try. And I will say he finds it very palatable. He loves it. So
more good.
Feeding it to him as like a treat when I see him, because I'm feeding such a low amount, right? 1 to 2 pounds essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, he really likes it.
Well, and that's the nice thing about Omega Match too. It's a ration balancer where the feeding rate is actually 0.2 pounds per 100 pounds of body weight. So it's like a 2-pound minimum feeding rate.
Mm-hmm.
But you can actually feed even a little bit more than that and be, because it does have the flax and the timothy. So I actually kind of think of it as a low volume feed. So maybe once you start turning him back out and maybe he needs a little more calories, you can feed it up to 4 to 5 pounds a day and be good. So, so that one actually has a little bit of a higher allowed feeding rate than your traditional ration balancers. But that's just a unique feature of that formula.
Interesting. So another question I have related to, my specific horse is, because I'm new to ration balancers too. So this is a little bit of a new territory for me. But I've always heard you should be careful that we're not adding too many different products to the mix of his routine feeding.
Right.
So I'm not oversupplying something that could actually be bad for him, like selenium or something like that. Is there any concerns like that I should be aware of?
Well, always, because you never want to oversupplement. And if you are feeding a ration balancer according to the feeding directions, like as a nutritionist, when I formulate a ration balancer, I know what the minimum selenium requirement is for a horse. And I also know what the maximum is, and selenium is a good example because it's one of the minerals with the narrowest safety margin of all the minerals. So I formulate that knowing that if you feed according to my directions that we wrote on the bag, your horse's selenium requirement is going to be met. And you don't need to feed any other selenium supplements. And that actually goes for all of the nutrients in the ration balancers. A good ration balancer formulated, by an equine nutritionist is going to provide everything that horse needs in a day if you follow the feeding directions. And that's a big caveat. A lot of people don't bother to read the feeding directions.
Right.
So, read the directions, look at and it's by your horse's body weight. Not every horse weighs 1,000 pounds. Most of them weigh more than that. I have a horse, he weighs 1,400 pounds. So I have to make sure, I just don't assume he needs 1 pound a day of a ration balancer. No, he actually needs 1.4 pounds a day, but read the directions, feed it with good quality forage, because your horse is still on a forage-based diet. So the forage is really critical. But if you're feeding a ration balancer, you have to just be aware you probably don't need to be feeding any other vitamin mineral supplements or, we could talk about supplementation on a whole nother hour, but there is a time and place for individual nutrients and individual ingredients for supplements. But just to meet a horse's daily nutrient requirements, a ration balancer covers it 100%.
Gotcha. Okay. So knowing that, I'm thinking about Purina's other ration balancer, Enrich, and I know that there is a senior version coming soon. What would a consumer need to know the difference between, the original Enrich formula versus what will be different in the senior version that maybe they would consider switching to the senior version?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about Enrich Plus Senior. It has all of the benefits of a good quality ration balancer. And so Enrich Plus has been around for years. It's been the great ration balancer for easy keepers, performance horses, young horses, and nothing's changing on that. It's, still good for metabolic horses. It's still good for easy keepers and all of that good stuff. Enrich Plus Senior comes in, and we decided to add Outlast to it because, we really believe in Outlast. And the other, I guess selfishly, I know that the Enrich Plus Senior is going to be great for performance horses. Outlast can also, is also good for performance horses. A lot of, senior horses, if they do have trouble chewing, the formula with Enrich Plus Senior is kind of, we call it this easy to chew formula. We have this technology that we've utilized when we created Equine Senior to look at chew strength and like the mechanics of chewing. So we incorporated that chew technology into our Enrich Plus Senior pellet. So it's easy to chew, easy to soak. So it soaks up really nice when you add water if you have a horse with poor teeth. And then really importantly, it includes the ActiveAge prebiotic technology. That's actually a patented technology. We found it to be so effective for supporting immune function. It supports mobility and also, appropriate metabolism, appropriate response to a meal, insulin glucose. It helps with insulin glucose dynamics. And so that ActiveAge is also built into the Enrich Plus Senior. So you kind of got these, what I like to call bells and whistles, right? Added to the Enrich Plus Senior formula, makes it really good for really older horses because of the chew and the ActiveAge, but it also makes it really good for your performance horses that are easy keepers, but that could benefit from the Outlast and the ActiveAge also.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot here, but Dr. Vineyard, I always like to ask, are there any myths or misconceptions about balancers that you'd like to put to rest here, or that you've seen? Maybe people feed them incorrectly that you would advise against?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. So feeding a ration balancer, you are feeding a forage-based diet. So really a key to success with a ration balancer is your hay quality and your forage, right? If you think about it, your horse is eating 20 pounds a day of something. If he's eating 1 pound of ration balancer, he's getting 19 pounds of forage. So it's really critical, to have a successful, to make sure your horse does well, really plenty of forage and good quality forage. And then, using that ration balancer to fill in the nutritional gaps. So that's what it's intended for, is to fill in those nutritional gaps, of the forage. But if you have really poor quality forage, it doesn't matter what ration balancer you feed it, the horse is not going to thrive. He still needs really good quality forage. I think as far as watch outs or kind of myth. So when I was a kid, growing up, we fed, what I like to say was the original ration balancer. And it was a product called Calf Manna. And it was great because it was a product that you fed these kind of the fat horses. It provided extra protein, some extra nutrients, these horses that didn't need like a full scoop of grain every day. And gosh, I was a kid a long time ago. So that's been around for a long time. We, now in modern equine nutrition, we have made a lot of strides, and there's now equine specific ration balancers on the market. And I know that some of these older like Calf Manna, and there's other products too, are still out there, but we've come a long way with equine nutrition. So, my watch out is, make sure you're feeding a ration balancer formulated for horses that is, very well formulated. Because again, it is a bit of a process to make sure we create a formula that in a 1 pound feeding rate is going to meet that horse's nutrient requirements when paired with hay. So having a well-formulated ration balancer that's specifically formulated for horses is just going to, make sure that your horse gets everything he needs.
Got it. All right.
And the other thing, if you've got one of the biggest mistakes I probably see, just general talking with horse owners and a feeding mistake, is underfeeding, like a concentrate or even a senior feed, a complete feed. There are so many people out there that are just, maybe feeding a half a scoop of senior twice a day. And that would maybe equate to 2 or 3 pounds of a senior feed twice a day. That their horse is probably missing some essential nutrients in their diet. because senior feeds are formulated at a higher feeding rate because they contain, part of the hay in that formula. So read your feeding directions, find out if you're underfeeding your product. And if you're only feeding 1 or 2 or 3 pounds a day of something, you probably need a ration balancer instead. You probably should switch to a ration balancer, and your horse actually will do much better because he'll be getting a more nutrient dense, product, and it'll be meeting his nutrient requirements more effectively.
That makes sense to me.
So all this conversation about feeding horses and buying different products, just, I don't know, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up a little bit, because as someone who is new to owning 2 horses for the first time in my life that I've ever had more than one, I'm just like, I just can't look at how much I spend on the horses anymore, because it's like insane some months. It's just crazy. And, I feel like this is something I've been hearing all over the place, like in my own barn, with fellow boarders and my trainer. Just inflation really hasn't helped anything, but it's not like horses were cheap to have before the pandemic. But I just feel like I'm hearing more people really starting to struggle to make ends meet with horses. And maybe that means they're not showing on the rated circuits anymore, and they're just doing schooling shows, which is pretty much my plan for now. But even that is obviously frivolous if you're showing horses at all. But I wondered if you guys are starting to see this and feel this in your own programs. Obviously, the 3 of us come at this conversation at very different levels and with different experiences and different people in terms of how serious we are with horses. But maybe, Jess, obviously you and Doug have a whole fleet of your own horses, but you have students. Like, how are you guys feeling about just the astronomical costs?
What, it sucks.
Yeah, right. But
it sucks. And we do partner with the majority of our horses, or at least a lot of them. I wouldn't even say the majority of them. But what we found is, like, from like a barn perspective, like I actually, funny enough, 3 weeks ago, I'm a numbers person, but was just running the numbers. Like, what is the actual cost for my horse, like a horse to be in the barn, making sure my numbers are correct. And I try to do that, on I wouldn't say a regular basis, but maybe like a 6 month to a year basis, to make sure what is the actual change happening, So like I pull months of data, do it all to like, what is it actually costing a horse to be in the barn? So I pull in all the numbers and everything else. So I was just doing this a couple of weeks ago, which is always depressing to do, to be honest. Like,
Yep.
I hate running the numbers, but I try to do it every 6 months to a year to like stay on top. Like, how much does it really change? Am I actually, making all this stuff? And so what I've done in the past 6 months, like, really I probably did it 6 months ago, and it changed a little bit, but I think my strategy changed a little bit now that we're, more comfortable with the area and everything else. So I started running numbers. I got my shavings down a lot. That was huge. A year ago maybe a year and a half ago, I was using a different hay source too. So I started just like shopping around, to be honest. Like, that was the biggest thing, is like, okay, look, I think this is a good deal, but is that the best deal out there? And it is a pain. You do have to call around. But my one feed store, hay store, whatever, where I was getting my shavings for, like, it was up to almost $10 a bag for shavings. And I was like, because we do bag shavings, because there's not really a place at the farm. And I end up losing too much, because I know that everybody says bulk shavings is the better way to go. Well, in the past, bag shavings were better for me. So I went around, and then I kept going down, and I still, stay on top of it to make sure I'm getting the best deal. And I'm at like $5.99 a shavings now. So that's a huge difference. That's $4 a bag from what the one store wanted to charge me, because they were going up. And I didn't just say, okay, great, I'm just going to stay with you. I said, no, I can't. I've got to go shop around. So things like that. And same with hay. And now I have a very good broker for hay, and he'll call, and, we just have a conversation quite frequently that says, hey, look, if you've got good quality and it's still this, I buy by the tractor trailer load, which sucks when you have to write the check, but it's at the end of the day, much cheaper, because I'm having to get hay shipped down from the Midwest or Canada or New York, and he sources it for me to find the best deal. And then we just stay on top of it. So things like that is grain still stays about the same and everything else, but definitely making sure my daily cost of supplies, and I'm really good. Like I don't just buy, whatever I find on one website. Like I price search, and maybe it takes me 30 minutes longer, but I make sure, their summer blankets or whatever are not the most expensive. And I go and definitely price check a lot so that my numbers can stay as low as possible.
So what about with clients, like students and stuff? Because my trainer is somebody I go to when I'm like, hey, obviously paying board is a priority. I'm not someone who's ever not been able to do that. But I come to my trainer when I'm like, for advice for things like that. Are you feeling that, Jess, with your students or anything, or trying to help them look for ways to save or things that they
same
can do?
thing. Like we've kind of gone to, I had one client the other day that we kind of went through this show schedule. She's a very competitive show jumper, but still it's expensive.
Right.
So, I'm like, well, maybe you skip these 2 weeks because they're probably going to be bigger weeks for a bunch of like the amateurs to be there. And you could probably make better money and prize money because she is very competitive, has a very good horse. So we started looking at the schedule of like what would be better off for her to show at, because she's got a better chance to do some bigger stuff. So she did like a welcome the other, like a couple months ago, basically, because like there weren't that many entries in it. And then, looking at numbers for her in particular, kind of because she is very competitive and the money could be there, that we looked at that. And then the other ones, we look at same, okay, this week's expensive because it's, an FEI week, the stalls are more expensive. But if we wait till August, stalls are less expensive for the exact same horse show, same arenas, same everything. So making sure for those certain people, like, yeah, there is that. And then just staying on top of it as well. Like if they need supplies and stuff, everybody was due for fly sheets or whatever else, like making sure, they're not just buying it at retail cost. A lot of times they're on sale.
Right. What about you, Ellie? I mean, obviously you have clients that you teach lessons, but even from your own perspective of running your own farm, I can feel the anxiety thinking about bills.
Right.
Like, do you have any tips, or how do you work with your clients with, just the affordability aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely gotten worse. I mean, and like Jess said, I think running the numbers is really important. Like I to know what each horse costs, because unfortunately it's a scary number.
You don't want to see the number, promise.
Yeah, but it's good to know. And I remember doing it honestly, even when I was a boarder, just saying like, okay, hypothetically, like, how much of my like money is actually going towards board. And I think that a big thing that people need to realize is boarding doesn't really make you any money. I think on my boarder, I make $20 a month. That's it. Like it's the rest of it goes towards the upkeep of everything else that has to happen, the shavings, the hay.
And that's a big expense that most people think, oh, you're boarding, you're making money. Like,
right.
It's very hard.
No, maybe if I magically had
a money tree.
Yeah, or a 60 stall barn that I never had to pay any kind of electricity bills for or water bills for. Like, I mean, it's not like that stuff is free. So
or
I think
mortgage or everything else.
Yeah, or property taxes. Yeah, it's not free. It's not nothing is cheap. But I think I know I've noticed with a couple of my clients, they've cut back, like we talked about last week, they've cut back on lessons and things like that, which I totally understand, and I've done it on myself as well. It's like, as much as I want to lesson and I want to show, this summer, it's like, I don't know if that's going to be a possibility for me, because what comes first is, their health and their well-being. It's like, especially right now with, the vet calls and things like that, it even though I have horses that aren't lame that I could show and I could go do fun things with, right? I'm not doing that because, when you spend $20 on one, that's $20 you can't spend on the others. So I think that is something to keep in mind, and I don't think any trainer is going to be offended if you are a week lessener and you're like, look, like, I know I did 3 days a week, but I've got to do 2 days a week now, because of this. I think it's something everyone, whether you're in the equine industry or not, is feeling, and it's hitting all of us. So I think that, I think it's important for trainers, as hard it is, especially if that is your full and only job. That's a really hard hit because unfortunately people cut back on your services. So that's a big one. But I think it's, everyone understands it, especially in the industry. Like, we're all trying to do what's best for the horses and to continue to feed the stinking horses. And
Right.
I think that's, the overall thing is like, it sucks. And it does come in waves. Like, I mean, my shavings have gone up $3 a bag.
Yeah.
Since COVID and everything. My grain has gone up $4.50 a bag. And, it's like, could I give them a cheaper, crappier grain? Yes. But am I going to do that? No.
All right.
So it's like, am I going to buy a new pair of underwear this month? Not happening. Those holes are going to stay there for a couple more. It's like the socks, I'll stitch them up, so I can keep going. But I mean, I think it's good to have those conversations, and like, I don't think anyone should feel ashamed or, anything like that if they're struggling to do something, because I think everyone is struggling right now. And I think it's just like, it's okay. No one is going to judge you because you went to one horse show this month instead of 2.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're all getting it. Like, even the facilities that are putting on these shows are feeling it. So I think that everybody needs to just give themselves some grace and acknowledge that it's okay, and acknowledge that inflation is a thing, and somehow we love these big, expensive animals. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can back you up on the cost of boarding, Ellie, as someone so I spend the most I've ever spent on board in my life right now for Mikey to live in a full board situation. And I've never really been anyone but a full board person because I'm someone who has a professional career with odd hours. I just always needed that peace of mind that my horse was cared for if I couldn't get to the barn. Flash forward to today, and I'm at the barn every day anyway because of my horse is really mostly on rest. And if I'm not there, then he stays in the stall, and that's in my own brain. I can't deal with that. So I drive to the barn every day. I don't live close to the barn. It's a 45-minute commute on a good day. So all that's gas and tolls I have to spend to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm an idiot and bought a second one that is self-care boarded across the street, who is very happy in his situation. But obviously, you guys know he's off the track, and I just cannot pump enough calories in him at any given time. So I'm just feeding an arm and a leg every day to keep weight on this damn horse. So can confirm 100% as someone who pays a full board check every month and then has to buy the feed for the horse across the street, that it's about the same, man. Like I'm not making, I'm barely saving any money by doing the self-care where I have to clean the stall every day because I'm feeding them pretty much the same amount, The only difference is the lessons, and the lessons are how my trainer makes it work. I can't fault her because she is trying to make it as affordable for all of us to keep her barn full, right? And lessons are just how she makes it work. It's tough. I don't really have good tips because it's just outrageously expensive to do this right now. And then I think about my farrier who spends his entire day in his truck driving around, and the cost of gas is insane. And he probably drives 200 miles a day to shoe horses, and his costs just recently went up. Like, what I pay for my horses is more expensive now than they were last year. But at the end of the day, he's just trying to stay in business. So this is a question I want to ask both of you, knowing all this, that like, Ellie, I think you hit the nail on the head that just everybody's feeling it right now, and to try to give yourself grace. But this is a conversation that we've been having in the industry for a long time. But do you worry that these rising costs, I mean, clearly they've got to in some way, are affecting accessibility of bringing more people into the sport, right? Like, how do you balance that, knowing it? Ellie, do you want to go first?
Oh boy. So I think this is a tough one, and I think this has been a tough conversation for a long time. Like, just being open and honest, as someone who grew up as, I was an 8-year-old kid working and cleaning 40 stalls on the weekends to afford to keep my horse there. My, 29-year-old Appaloosa pony. Like, I mean, I was doing those things because I could not afford it. Like, my mom was just visiting me, and we were talking about how I used to get bullied by the other barn kids, and they would make comments like, oh, you can't afford your own show pony, so you just get my sloppy seconds and things like that. And I mean, that was, oh God, I don't want to talk about how many years ago that was, because that's terrifying to think I'm that old. But I think that's, it's something that's definitely not new in this industry. But I think that it's showing up again, because it's definitely creating a big gap, because the people who, work full-time jobs and have horses, maybe even one horse, and want to be able to go to shows, it's even more expensive now. And I think that has made it difficult. I don't think it's necessarily the industry specifically that has made it difficult. I think, the inflation is everywhere, whether it's, for, paying for your farm electric or paying for your home electric. So I think it's kind of created a big gap between the people who have that extra money to be able to show and the people who are having to cut back, if that makes sense. And I think it's just important to like acknowledge that, everyone that goes in the show pen doesn't necessarily come from the same place. So if you're, going to knock somebody or think poorly of them for having, a cheaper saddle, or maybe, a naggy horse, like I think now is especially the time where you should just be excited that people are wanting to share in the love for the sport and the love for the animals. And I think it's important to help people out in any way that we can, whether that's monetarily or otherwise. Like, even just, I mean, when I go and teach lessons, right, I don't need to, but I take a couple dollars off if I'm doing more than, one lesson that time. I'm like, well, I only had to drive out here once, you know what I mean? Because they are people that are working full-time jobs. They don't have expensive horses. They're just trying to continue their education in the sport. And, and I admire that. And yes, does it, hurt me a little bit when I'm paying my bills that month? Yes. But I feel like I'm doing that as like my own kind of give back to our sport, because I think it's so important to have a wide range of people and accessibly being able to be a part of our sport.
Well said, Ellie. All right, guys, it's time for Rose and Thorn. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
All right.
So I'll start with my thorn. This past week, we were at Tryon, which was not my thorn. It was great. We love Tryon, everything. We go hook up the big truck. I drive Doug down there first thing in the morning. We hook up the big truck. No big deal. Go to trailer parking, like day parking. We parked at Barn 4. So it's not far. But we park it, and it's a big rig. So we're not in the way, but you wouldn't want to leave it there more than a couple hours type thing. So we get everything packed up, we jump, and then we put 4 horses on my trailer. We pull forward and we go to move. We call the big rig Frank. We go move Frank up, and he won't start at all. And so we sit there, Doug's like, oh, come bring it. So I bring my truck. At this time, actually, the horses are not in my trailer yet because we think, oh, it's not a big deal. So the horses are not in my trailer. I bring my truck and trailer around and we jump it. We sit like 20 minutes jumping it. He's like, I just don't think your truck's going to be strong enough, even though it's got 2 batteries. So he like flags down a maintenance guy and gets like the dump trucks. And I was like, okay, well, it sounds like it's the battery. Like it's fine. So I go load up the FEI horses, with Sam Sheridan, everyone's helping, but we go load up. I go to the main barn again. We get 2 more one of the stallions and one of the other national horses, and they're in the trailer. And I'm like, okay, Doug, like, why is your truck not starting? Like it should be done in no time. And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a problem. But long story short, it doesn't start. I have 4 horses on the trailer. We can't get it out. So he's like, I think it's the batteries. Everyone says it's the batteries. It will be no big deal. I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm going to run to AutoZone real quick, get the batteries. I said, okay, well, we have 4 horses on my trailer. Let's rearrange everything because we were driving a car as well. So I take the truck home with the horses. Long story short, the starter is now dead on the truck and we can't get it started. And it's Sunday afternoon. It's blocking everything. So it becomes like an epic pain. Longer story short, we got it all resolved. Somebody at Tryon had a maintenance guy that was going to come out the next day. We got it all figured out. Doug did have to go make one more trip to get some more horses, but it all worked out. But oh my goodness, for like 30 hours, I was like, okay, we have 8 horses at Tryon that need to get home eventually. And this is like such a long process. But so that is my thorn, is that it was a lot, and it was a lot on our poor girls and everything else. So poor things, everybody had to deal with a lot, but we made it through and we got it. And so that was kind of a pain, but we made it through. So that is definitely my thorn.
Equipment knows when it's time that you need to do something, and it just.
Well, and the worst was like, we've been going for so many weeks that like we have like 3 weeks at home right now. And we're like, oh, this will be like such a good downtime for like half our employees. They can take a couple days, and like, no, poor Sheridan's stuck in Tryon, like with 8 horses. And I'm like, okay, well, eventually we will get you home. I promise.
Oh my gosh.
But she's such a trooper, and everybody was amazing. And, when they say it takes a village, it really does take a village, but we got it all done. But my rose is that I feel like this is always my rose these days, but I went to PT. I'm still doing physical therapy for my leg and everything. And I had a friend go, I didn't know you're still doing physical therapy. I'm like, well, until I'm like 100%, like I'm going to keep going because yeah, I look good and I can walk, but like, I'd like to get back, really strong again.
Of course.
So I went to physical therapy, and I have almost like full flexion, and I'm definitely fully straight, which is amazing. And I'm now doing more and more exercises, but I can walk. I'd say 90% of the time you don't see a limp at all, which is for me amazing. So in it feels like an eternity, but in the long run, a short amount of time, like it really is coming along and doing well. So that is definitely my rose, is that physical therapy is still going well and I'm improving every time. So that's all you can really hope for.
I know. Good for you, awesome. Jess. You're getting so close,
Getting so close. And I've been riding, which is great. But I think in the next couple of weeks, everybody thinks I should be able to I can get on by myself and everything now. So that's nice. I don't have to have I still have somebody hold the horse to make sure it doesn't move, but I don't have Sheridan holding my leg and trying to get on and all that to make sure it's stable. So I'm actually really, really excited that it's finally feeling a little bit more normal.
Good.
Which one of you are next?
Ellie, you want to go?
Sure. I'll start with my thorn because it's really sad. Unfortunately, I had to put down my diabetic Cushing's cat. Last week. Yeah, it kind of sucked. I mean, she's gone through a lot. Obviously, she has every illness that is possible for a cat. But they did an ultrasound because her heart was sounding a little funny, and they found that either she had a really large mass on her heart or she had a blood clot in her heart.
Oh, no.
Either way, with like her fragile skin and stuff, she wasn't a surgical candidate. And if it was a blood clot, it was only a matter of time before she threw another one that would give her a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. So I had to do like the put her down on a good day kind of thing. So that was tough, even though I only adopted her because I was working at the shelter and I didn't want her to die in a cage, which is somehow how I get all of my animals. I'm like, I just don't want you to die here. So that was tough, but like I found this lady that I used to work with when I was as a receptionist for a small animal, and she actually does at-home euthanasias. So it was really great because I was able to, spend the day with her and just feed her whatever the heck she wanted. And I was able to do it like, relaxing for her. There was no stress of going to the vet and stuff. So I think that was good about that, but
Aw.
definitely hit me hard for sure. But my rose is that my mom came to visit me, which was really exciting because my birthday was on Monday, which is kind of terrifying to be closer to 30. I know you guys have already gone through that, okay? But for me, it's definitely a little terrifying, especially when your mom's like, no, you're 26. And I'm like, no, Mom, I'm not. And she's like, oh my God. So my mom was coming to grips with, she was like, I'm old. I was like, yeah. So it was nice. We were able to hang out together, and we went for a trail ride. Thankfully, before the skies turned to ash, I was able to, we were able to ride and stuff. And that was fun. We just kind of walked around the hay fields and stuff. So that was nice. And it was just good to have her visit and stuff. So definitely a positive for me. But what have you got, Justine?
Oh, well, I'm sorry about your cat, Ellie. That's the worst.
So sad.
Thanks.
Good question. Rose would probably be this weekend. My friend Katie and I, who's sort of like my partner in crime, who I event with, she has a lovely 3-year-old Irish filly that she's bringing along. So she's sort of like Wyatt's, low-level green buddy on these trips, and our horses love each other. And her horse Paisley is like Mikey's best friend. So we've evented together now, like with 2 horses that are buds. We went up to Tallahassee, which is a good hike for us. It's about 4 hours to haul up there to a beautiful farm up there called Mahan Farm. They put on a wonderful schooling series, but it's pretty serious. Like they put out a pretty beefy cross-country course, and it's a little bit more of a spookier environment for the young horses to kind of see and take in the sights. So we were excited to go up there, and Wyatt was like a superstar. He finished on his dressage score. He was second in the division, which is very exciting. Yeah, but the best part of the weekend was just being at this beautiful place where the weather, like it was like highs in the 60s in the morning, and I haven't felt that in months, where I was like, oh
perfect.
My God.
So nice.
We're like so far, it felt like we weren't in Florida. It was amazing. And we stayed an extra day to like school at another farm that was nearby. And both young horses were just like super excellent and took in the new environments, like total pros. And we had like very constructive rides. So it was all in all just like a really fun weekend with great horse friends. Like the girl Lindsay who runs the horse shows, we know just, from being in Ocala and stuff. And she was always like super welcoming. And a friend of ours, Krista, who lives in Tampa, was also there. So she hosted this like amazing happy hour for all the adult riders the night before the horse show with like this great spread outside of her horse trailer. It was fun. It was just like one of those horse shows that like you were just with the best group of people, like you knew enough people there that everyone was so kind and everyone had a good time. So I'm riding high after a really good weekend. And then my thorn is, well, I got my truck back finally. So I'm no longer driving the rental car that I should.
Oh, that is great for your hay situation.
I know, but the thorn is there are still problems. So while I was like, oh, the truck's great, like let's haul it 4 hours back and forth this weekend with the horse trailer. And then we realized that they did not fix all the damn things. So it must go back. And I'm, you know how mad like that gets you in the moment, where I was just like, I might need to ruin someone's life. I was so mad, with the customer service of this place. Like It's been a 2-month ordeal and this is insane. It was just my bumper. How are like bolts falling out of the bottom of my truck? It's crazy. So I'm trying not to freak out about it. But anyways, the truck, like it made it, but there's problems. Moral of the story is don't get in a car accident right now because I think all of the auto body places are just super slammed and have supply chain issues. And I'm just a victim of all of that. So PSA, drive safe. You don't want to end up in the situation I'm in. So that is my
joke.
all right. But we have a mailbag from Karen who posted in our Facebook group. She wanted to hear more about shipping boots. Do people still use these? She wanted to know, like, should she be concerned about, ligament and tendon damage? Because obviously we know there's some research out there that suggests that overheating the legs obviously isn't a good idea. And keeping them wrapped in transit, is that overheating them? So curious on your thoughts. Maybe Jess, do you want to start as somebody who
I was gonna say,
all
I
over?
can definitely start first.
Yeah, you ship a lot.
I ship a lot. Yes. So we do use shipping boots and we use wraps, and we do it for different horses for different reasons. So wraps can be hot as well. The back on tracks can get hotter, or we can use the white, just plain cotton like Nobos.
Right.
We on easy hauls and stuff like that absolutely use the shipping boots. They're great. I love the fact they go all the way down to the horse's like bottom of the leg, so that if they're standing next to a horse and it we've had them like step close enough that it's gotten contact with their foot or whatever, it goes all the way down. It protects all of that. So as a rule of thumb, we generally do the shipping boots first. And then if the horse is a little weird, then we'll do certain wraps or wrap them. Or if they've just been done jumping a big class and we've iced them, we let their legs dry and then we wrap them and then ship them home. So we do kind of a variety of things. More often than not, we're not shipping in the heat of the day. We're either shipping at night or first thing in the morning. So we haven't really had to worry about actual heat on them. We have been in that situation where then we just check on them, and we do have fans in the trailers and stuff too. So it kind of is a different situation where we're not really dealing with the heat. And a lot of times we'll just monitor it because yes, the shipping boots can get hot, but so can the wraps. And if they're by themselves in a trailer, I'd probably feel more comfortable not wrapping them or putting shipping boots on them.
Good
so
point.
Then in the heat of the day, I'd say, yeah, absolutely. They're probably going to be fine. Maybe throw on some bell boots so they don't interfere. But with the fact we're shipping usually a ton of horses, anywhere from 9 to 15 plus, they're usually enough in the trailer that they're close enough together. I worry that if they go to fight, I don't really want them to interfere with the next one. They're all fairly good, but we know they're horses and like to get in trouble. So we have had great success with majority shipping with shipping boots, and then sometimes just putting on wraps. Because if they paw a lot or they tear up the shipping boots, it's not worth it. So then those particular horses go in wraps instead.
Yeah, I'm with you too. So actually a perfect example is my friend Katie's young mare who I just hauled this weekend. She is someone who's very dancy in the trailer and has come off the trailer in the heat of summer when we didn't put boots on them and cut her legs. She's just dancing. And my trailer has the divider, their feet can't touch each other, but in Katie's trailer, they can. It's just the bars and the divider is up high, but their legs can get intertwined. So we're not exactly sure what happened that day, but she cut herself pretty good. It was a wake-up call. So that one always has some type of back boot protection on her legs, whether it's just plain standing wraps, but I'm also big on the back on tracks too. I've just always wrapped mine just because for God forbid, just protection from the elements of what could happen in an emergency situation with the trailer. But yeah, I'm mindful of do I keep my horse wrapped overnight if I'm going to a horse show in August? No. You know what I mean? But in the trailer, I feel like some form of protection is warranted. Even if we're going just for a trail ride and it's 5 minutes down the road, I just might slap on my Eco Gold exercise boots on their legs, something I would ride them in just to give them some sort of outward protection in the trailer. But I've definitely in the past put nothing on my horses and been fine when they're alone. But if they've got a buddy next to them, I generally put some protection on them. What about you, Ellie?
I agree with you guys. I've done both. You know, I feel like I do a lot more wrapping just because most of my trucking recently has been to the equine hospital.
Yeah, so
I'm like, I'm trying to stabilize everything. So I feel like that gives them, I mean, I like to, like, for longer distances, especially like when I was trucking Berkeley to and from college, you know, it was like 5.5 hours for him. So I definitely wrapped him for that. I didn't use the shipping boots, but when I'm going just to like the fairgrounds, it's like 25 minutes from my house. They are a lot easier just to whoop, whoop, just flip them on and go. But yeah, mostly recently. I mean, plus I have a step up trailer. So I'm one of those people that like, I mean, it's obviously super, you know, padded. It's got the big rubber things on the back. So they're not going to like, you know, hurt themselves on the trailer for that. But I'm always just very careful about it because they do step down off of it. So I wrap them just for their protection because I have terrible luck. And I know if I didn't, something would probably happen. So,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, I've never seen specific, like, if anyone knows it, correct me and show us in the group on Facebook. But I've never seen an overheating study done for shipping boots specifically. I've seen it for like exercise, like polo wraps versus, you know, other exercise leg wraps. But I've never seen it done for shipping boots. I don't think I've had any of my horses really ever get very hot in the shipping boots. They're pretty like wick away kind of. I've never seen them get that hot. So.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. We should keep the discussion going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have a question for us and you want us to answer it on the air, you can send us an email by going to hello@heelsdownmedia.com, or you can join our Facebook group. We have really great discussions in there all the time. That's the Heels Down Happy Hour Podcast Lounge. You can search for that. And if you want to hear more from us, you should subscribe to the Heels Down Spark. You can do that by going to bit.ly/Spark by HD. And we want to say thank you to our partners this week, Purina. All right, guys, that's a wrap.
Cheers.
Cheers.